Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Blonde. Not much, not much of a musical entry there because I pressed the button late. However, glad to be with you. Thanks very much for coming to join me on a day that's been quite a nice one. And we do understand at this time of year you've got 1,000 things to do. So anybody that pops their head in our direction, we really appreciate it. So thank you very much. Got an absolutely cracking full show for you tonight as well. A lot of stuff. The whole point of the blog, as you know, it's just a way that we can keep the community going and make sure that we've got direct access towards one another. Tomorrow night, you've got just dynamite coming. Dynamite, provided it goes off the way that we plan. Last week didn't. The entire place we were setting the whole show fizzled out like that, and we weren't able to do it. We got a chance to have a look in to those RAF buildings in Craster, courtesy of our friend Maz, who became our guide, and she was dynamite. Did really well, and there was. Could we have got something? Well, maybe if we'd have had time to spend, and I mean literally spend an hour or two in the buildings. That was the original plan. And as usual, things didn't go to plan. We had no clue that one of the lady sheep would have a baby lamb, in one of the buildings, or right next to it. We saw them when we were there, and we didn't want to disturb, we didn't want to cause any problems to mother in newborn. So we had to move. Now, yes, we did have a couple of other stories from lower down based around the camp. Eric's Bite. We went there. I thought that was stunning. And we got a few little tweaks here and there. And then we went a little bit further along and we came across a lady called Anne. In spirit, maybe. Now, we were getting response and direct answers from the balls. We didn't take Suki. We were going to do an old school kind of show because we hadn't done one for the longest time. We've always relied on equipment, and you don't need it. You've just got to be there. Well, 27 of you clearly saw the figure that Maz and I saw. 13 of you also were looking at him when he disappeared, which is great. So we got a little bit something, but it was late on in the show. I could feel in everything inside me drain out when we were walking away from the huts, because that was the show. And then we got no show. So you do what you can to make a show. And to be honest, if the first part of the show had been remotely as good as the second half of the show, I would have been very, very happy indeed, because it was pretty good. Happy birthday to Marion as well. Maz's birthday this week. She did great. Our entire ghost hunt was essentially shot down in flames, like that Hawker Hurricane chasing Henkels away from the coastline, when we couldn't do the RAF huts. But I don't think we did too bad when we improvise like we do. Now, we will not need, I don't think, to improvise tomorrow night. Guaranteed sizzler tomorrow night. I've done it kind of, but I've never done it like this. So I think you're in for a treat tomorrow night, 7:30. Okay, 7:30 tomorrow night. Sizzler. Gather the clans. Cracker tomorrow night. Now, other things. Do you remember on the Necromancer? Now, quite often when we finish the show, we look back at what the Necromancer got, and we can either go, did we really get anything there? Or, it's that looking for that magical 5%. Did we get anything? Because I know nothing about what came through. We got an Anne who died in a fall, who has 2 daughters that are still alive. So it's last 30, 40, 50 years. I hear from Paul. Alan, in 1996, Anne Williams had a fall on the rocks near Castle Walk, which is where we were, around 30 feet close to the sea, near the gate, pretty much exactly where you guys were. She suffered spinal injuries, and 4 months later, she died from a bleed on the brain. Now, if somebody falls and breaks a bone, doesn't even go in the newspaper. You know, somebody just fell over on some rocks, broke an arm, broke a leg, broke this. Doesn't go in the newspaper. So it didn't feature in the press, this story, at all. Didn't, nowhere. I couldn't find it. I've looked. I went online, Anne Williams, fall, 1996, Craster. There's nothing online. That's what makes this pretty special. Tragic that she was to pass. She lived in Long Horton. She had 2 daughters, Gemma and Caroline. And the 2 guys that sent it in only knew about it because one of them worked for the ambulance service and actually went out, picked up Anne and took her to hospital. Now, I just think, did we get? I would love to think so. You keep an open mind, of course, but that's more than I expected in any shape or form. Gave you that little goosepimply feeling briefly. Derek got our show on Robson's World about the living dead, and he said, I had a thoroughly entertaining afternoon on Sunday. Listened to the whole thing in one go. Loved it. Thank you very much. Glad that you're checking these things out. So, onwards, ever onwards. And this week we have a treat courtesy of Alistair. Alistair went to Jedburgh Jail. Now, it's an amazing place, lovely people. And he said, it was busy as hell, but I had a great feeling of achievement thanks to you, my family, and supporters. I would not be here today without you guys. P.S. My son made an appearance. Now, I've noticed 2 things in this. Usually, Alistair's only in it at the beginning, and maybe he has a little chat on the way through. This time, he's kind of gone for stardom, and he's trying to get it, you know, like a little bit. And the sun also rises. He's also got his son in there. He does a good job. Have a watch.
Hi, Alan. I'm actually in Jedburgh Jail today. Somewhere you've been before. I hope you like the pictures. Ciao for now. I'd just like to say before I go, thank you all the supporters for liking my videos and all the support that you've given me to carry on. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. See you next week. Goodbye.
How good is that? Nice one, Alistair. Glad you're still getting out and you're looking well, which I tell you is rare for many people with Michael Parkinson. So well done, mate. Will Bryan went to Chillingham. Now, I've been sent a lot of shots. I've just got to try and identify his shot. I think it's this one. There it is. Will Bryan. He says, if you look at the middle tower, now I know I can't blow it up. I'm not as skilled as Tony, but if you look at the middle tower, apparently, if you blow it up, if you can, on your big tellies, there's a woman's head poking out of one of the windows. And he said he was in the King Edward room and he used his necromancer and he got children's murder. He also bumped into Richard the Boffin. Now, the interesting thing about the children's murder, there is a story, and because it's so far back, nobody really knows if it's true. You go back 400 years in British history, nobody has a clue. But everybody's certain about the Bible. That all happened, obviously. But anyway, 400 odd years ago, 1600s, when the prison was full of Scots, a peace was found between Scotland and England, and Longshanks, King Edward I, declared that all the prisoners should be released. Now, John Sage, the torturer, said that while he was in charge, no Scot would leave the castle alive. Now, the king heard this and said, yes, they will. And he said, every Scottish person who walks through the gates will not be hurt by anyone from the castle. Well, of course, Sage went around all the villages stirring up the people who'd lost family and friends and land and cattle to the Scots. And they lined up along the Devil's Mile. And they massacred these tortured Scottish men, women and children and left their bodies along the drive and carriages rode over them until they were pulped, essentially. And also, he got children's murder. A lot of the sons and daughters of clan chiefs, little kids, were held in one of the tower rooms. And it was said that he couldn't let the children walk out the castle. But the king demanded that the gates be opened. So John Sage said to his men, okay, send the children to the gates. And they opened the window and threw them down into the courtyard. The fact that they didn't walk through it, he still set them free. Difficult and evil ancient times. So, on to my next one. We've got a lot of these. Jordan, still loving everything. Jenny wrote, bit tired of war museums. We've only ever done one. She obviously didn't like it. But we have had a run of 3 kind of war-related things. So I kind of understand if you're not into that. It's just how they've fallen. We had the opportunity, so we took it. We did the Prisoner of War camp. And we also did, obviously, Craster's radio towers that we weren't able to get into a few months back. Michael, I've listened to you since the 1980s. Would love to meet you one day. I hope you do. Just where I am and how my schedule is, because I've got to do 2, ideally 3, to build up a back catalogue of new shows. I've got to do either 2 or 3 a week, and that takes me all over the place. So I hope it happens. Anyway, I still want to do something where everybody meets one evening on a beach or something. I just think it'd be cool. Jed says, Alan, I am not a dog lover. My neighbour has 2. When he's out, they bark, whine, and run amok. He says they're trained, but they're not. Have you ever come across dogs on your hunts? Yes. One was the ghost white dog on Holy Island, which was very cool because we actually caught it on camera, which is great. But the funniest one's a story that I've never told because it's kind of well, it's very embarrassing. It's funny in retrospect, but it wasn't funny at the time. Now, I don't want to spoil this show because I happen to know that somebody's in the process of listening to it at the moment. I'll read you their DM to me a little bit later on. But I was doing a show about a haunted cave where cannibals lived up the northeast coast, north of Berwick, close to North Berwick rather than Berwick. Now, this cave was literally on the beach. And when the tide came in, that's the cave mouth. When the tide came in, the tide went there. So the entire cave was flooded and cleaned out every night. The thing is, the cave inside went along and then it went up. So the main part of the cavern was dry, but the doorway to the cavern was completely sealed by tidal water. Now, I can't swim. I'm not frightened of the water. I just really don't like it to the degree of I wouldn't be in it. And I found myself in that cave. I was told that the tide would come in that evening, round about 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. I discovered at about 22 in the morning that the cave was already sealed with water. Now, I could have stayed in that cave all night. Instead, I did something terrifying for me. I'm sure you that have heard it probably quite enjoyed it. However, I was in the haunted cave. The cave is sealed by the sea, so I had to literally get a plastic bag round me mic, which it already had anyway because it had been raining and I didn't want to ruin the show. And I duked underwater, killed my watch, incidentally. I went underwater, came up in the North Sea, totally black. Which way do I go? I could have just gone straight out to the sea. I ended up managing to turn around and see like rocks and stuff, climbed up them and survived. Where's the dog, Alan? It's not still in the cave. When I got out, I got to my vehicle and I'm soaking wet. And even though it wasn't by any stretch a new vehicle, it was old even then, I didn't want to get in there soaking wet and squeezy squelchy. And I did know that I had some like jogging stuff in the back. So I thought, I'll take off all my wet stuff. It's pitch black and there's nobody there. It's pitch black. This is more awful than you know, truly. So anyway, I'm stripping off. I am naked. On the ground is me tatty, joggy t-shirt, pair of shorts, some fluffy white socks and a pair of trainers. Champion. All the wet stuff, wet shoes. Shoes were ruined. Anyway, I reached down So I'm on me honkers, right? I'm on me honkers, bending forward. Not my best side. And all of a sudden, there's no nice way of putting this. All of a sudden, I feel something stroke my balls. I mean, there's something. And I turned around, there's a bloke, I'm naked. There's a bloke standing there with a Jack Russell. And the dog had come up and gone, on me testes. And of course, me feeling it, I went, whoa! Everything jiggling around. I would love to say, but it was because I was freezing cold North Sea. And he ended up kind of covering yourself up. And he said, "Are you all right, son? You're falling in the water." Kind of. But anyway, that is what actually really happened when I got back to the vehicle after doing Sony Bean, which is on Robson's World. You can hear the whole thing. But anyway, that was that. So, yes, I have come across dogs, not always in a nice way. Julian Craster, I mean, he could have bitten, you know. Anyway, Julian Craster, this was about the RAF cabins. Julian Craster says that he was aware that a Bambara woman, Mrs. Hogg, we mentioned Mrs. Hogg when we were doing the show. And Julie said, my mother knew Mrs. Hogg. She all but ran the site, cleaning, helping cook and serve. And her ghost is said to still be on the site, watching over the place. Now, I must say that when we were up there, I didn't get any, my sixth sense, if that's what it takes, certainly wasn't firing to any level, but if she is still there, we're grateful for her. Now, I put a kind of a teaser out on Monday about something that's happening tomorrow from midnight tonight. And it's a Titanic bundle. It's to commemorate the anniversary of the Titanic. 2 shows, over 8.5 hours content. The first show won a New York Radio Award, biggest radio award you can get anywhere in the world, and a Sydney Radio Award, biggest award you can get in Australia. The first Titanic show, it was only about 3 hours. I have subsequently extended it with additional footage, so it's not like anything you might find on YouTube. It's now much bigger. And a second show was added to that, the Titanic curse. People who survived the Titanic, who ended up in all kinds of trouble. And you would think, hey, the luckiest people on the earth. No. So we put the 2 shows together, and it's a 2-for-1 tomorrow on Robson's World, if you fancy. Just until midnight tomorrow night, okay? So that's what all that was about. And that picture, incidentally, was one of the last shots of the Titanic vanishing into fog. Lee said, Alan, I watched your Finkel Abbey hunt. There is said to be a witch buried there, slain and buried to protect local people. This is Lee Maria. If there is a witch there, it would surprise me, because you would never bury a witch on sacred ground. I mean, the witch may be just off it, but I'd be very surprised if it was on it. It's possible. Reports of a demon in the Undercroft because some kids Ouija. One kid was impaled on railings and found hanging, and another person was found hanging in one of the barns. But you keep up the amazing work. It always makes my week, Lee Maria. Well, if we go back to Finkel, come with us. Maz did such a good job. Let's spread it out a bit. If we go back to Finkel, Lee Maria, you're with us, okay? Deal. Clary, we mentioned Shafto. You know, when we started the show last week, we were talking about Shafto Crocester. Shafto Craster. Great name. And she says, is it anything to do with the Bobby Shafto pub in Scotswood? Oh, bloody hell. I remember that well. And the answer is no. The place associated with Bobby Shafto is Beamish Hall, or Beamish Country House Hotel as it is now. That's where Bobby Shafto, the whole story is. who went to sea with silver buckles on his knee. He came home and he didn't marry her. Anyway, long story short. But you mentioned the Bobby Shafto story incoming. One of the great unrequited loves of my life is a lady called Helen. Now, I had an opportunity with Helen many, many years ago, and I didn't take it up. And I've regretted it for most of my life, because I thought she was great. And I tried to stalk her I knew that she occasionally bought posh sandwiches from Phoenix, and I was working in Newcastle City Centre. So I would go and just spend my entire lunch just mooching around the sandwich counter in Phoenix, just in case she popped in. She only did like twice, and she was with other people, and I couldn't separate her from the herd, if you know what I mean. And I met with her about probably 20 years ago in Marks and Spencer's in the Metro Centre. And we said hi, and we had a chat, and she's been married for donkey's years. She's got she had 2 sons with her. And you think, well, congratulations. I'm glad she's had a lovely life. I hope she has. But the Bobby Shafto pub, Scotswood. Now, back in the dark days of Scotswood, when there were many brutalities and skinheads, and I was and still am a hairy mother flipper. And I went along to see Helen as friends, and I was at her house for about 2 or 3 hours, and I missed the last bus home. For back then, there was a last bus at 11 o'clock that would take you from Scotswood, where she lived, all the way along to Benwell, where I lived. So I had to walk, and I had to walk past the Bobby Shafto. Now, the Bobby Shafto at that time, outside the Bobby, was where the skinheads hung out. Some of them were too young to go in, and they all had baseball bats, lumps of wood, pit bull terriers and there'd be about 40 of them sitting outside the Bobby Shafto. So I thought, I've got to walk past the Bobby Shafto, but what I'll do is I'll go down a couple of streets and I'll walk. Then I've just got to cross the street to the back alley and go along the back alley. And then once I'm past the Bobby, I can turn back up onto that road and come home along Armstrong Road. And problem was I was wearing segs on the soles of my shoes. So even though there was just me walking, I sounded like the German army crossing the Rhine. And they saw me, even from about 100 yards, saw hairy boy walking across the street. Get him! And they all ran down. And I had to run all the way from Scotswood to Newcastle. Then I couldn't go home because if I went in and put my lights on, all my windows would have gone. And my mum was in alone because my dad was at work. So I had to run and hide in Benwell on top of some old garages. They didn't catch me. And I had to lie there for about 40 minutes until they'd gone. Scary, scary times. But that's my only memory, proper memory of the Bobby Shafto. Was a rough bar. Teresa and her wife have just come back from Nevada, where so many Western movies were set. Have you any history, or can you dig out some photos of the Wild Wild West? Done it for you? Yes, I can. So let's rock and roll a few Wild Western shots. Now, 1 or 2 of these will not be Western shots, because I want to share with you this. This is the Castle Keep in Newcastle upon Tyne. It is a Victorian shot of the dark old days. And if you wonder how it's changed, hasn't much. That's it now. They've tidied it up a bit. But amazing, isn't it? Just thought I'd share that with you. Talking about the Wild Wild West, I've been lucky enough to visit this place. We've got a special on it. It's the Alamo in Texas. That's the mission that Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie held from Santa Anna's Mexican army. Let's look at a few more. This is just what your standard wagon train would look like. If ever you've gone moving house, you'll know it's one of the most stressful things in the world. That's essentially what they're doing, armed to the teeth. And it was one of the most dangerous things to do. This is a man called John Wesley Hardin, who was a gunfighter who killed about 27 people in his time. Did you have any ornaments on your hearth? It's all guns there. Guns, spurs, an axe, half a dozen rifles. And back in those days, you absolutely needed them. This is a hanging. That's kind of what it looked like in spectator sport back in the day. Wonder if any of you can recognize these two. The gentleman sitting down is Wyatt Earp. The man standing over him is also an ex-sheriff and gunfighter, Bat Masterson. You'll all get this next one right. You got to know who that is. Golden Hair was his nickname. William Custer. William Armstrong Custer, in fact. Who didn't die, the little big one. He was about 15 miles away. But why should facts mess up a good story? These are the Pinkerton Detective Agency. When sheriffs and marshals were coming to an end, even though they still exist, the Pinkertons came in to do proper modern investigations. William Bonney, Billy the Kid, shot down in a blaze of glory. This is an outlaw. Now, I did have a photo in this pile. Tony has neglected to put it up, but I did have the picture of him stripped to the waist with about 25 bullet holes in him. And that is available on the net if you look for it. Now, if you've ever seen the film Calamity Jane, starring Doris Day, who's marginally attractive, and she sings the Deadwood Stage and whip, crack away, whip, crack away, whip, crack away. She, in fact, just blew in from the Windy City, and the Windy City's mighty pretty because it ain't got what we've got, no siree. They've got stacks up to 7 stories. Never seen any morning glories, just a step from your doorway, and they get it for free. In fact, they've got those minstrel shows, pretty ladies in the big chateaus, private ponds, public parks, and for the sake of civic virtue, they've got fountains there to squirt you. But anyway, this is what the real Calam looked like, which may explain why Wild Bill Hickok didn't run off with her. That's not being terribly fair, but come on. In that photograph, she's 24, right? Yeah. Now this cracking story. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Now, we did a special on Robson's World about it, and it blew my mind. Because first of all, they probably survived. Forget the film where they got all shot to death somewhere like Colombia. The true story is amazing. I mean, amazing. Love the Robson's World on that. But the juiciest thing is, one of them came from Edinburgh, and the other one came from Tyneside. One of them's a Geordie. Now, how come we didn't know that? Amazing. Now, if you're falling out of the plane, take this guy with you. Geronimo. Looks like he's capable. This is Wild Bill Hickok with a fine ginger hair and a ginger tash and a hat. I mean, who could get away with a look like that? Anyway, Texans, everything's bigger in Texas, apparently. Now, again, something else that has a link to Newcastle upon Tyne. This is Buffalo Bill and a group of Native Americans at Buffalo Bill's Wild West shows that he took all over the place. And they appeared at a big top and on the streets of Newcastle upon Tyne in the Haymarket. How about that? Before they built the Dirty Angel. the hanging of a slave. And look at how many people have come out to see a man of colour die. Not, of course, a single face of colour in the audience. A slave tried to escape having to be a slave. Let's hang him. But let's make a day of it. My goodness. This is a woman jumping over a car for no apparent reason at all. Another hanging with more white people watching. No loafing allowed here. Just get drunk and get out. There's a few more. That's a brothel. Not the sexiest looking outfits I've ever seen. Buffalo soldiers, as Bob Marley would say, for money. Dreadlock Rasta. 3 shot outlaws on display. Their dead bodies just put in the back of a cart. A funeral through the streets. More Buffalo Bills, Wild West. What they used to do is they would find a big area, then a mail coach or a stage coach would ride around, and then the Native Americans would come out and try and shoot everybody and fire arrows and make it very exciting. And then Buffalo Bill would arrive with his group of cowboys who'd kill all the Native Americans, and thus proving that white, pink people are like better than anybody else because we kill everybody. Cool. These are wanted posters. These are real ones. This is a little girl who is 10-year-old who went missing, and they've offered a $500 reward to try and find 10-year-old Katie Mary Curran. She was abducted from Boston. This is how most murder pamphlets came out, looking for Samuel Miller, who was in fact a slave. Proclamation. They're looking for the arrest of express train robbers in Missouri. This one I think is quite funny. It's awful. It's a runaway slave, as it says here, of a woman called Sophia Gordon. And listen to how disparaging they are. Now, it's bad enough that she's a slave. 24 years of age, rather small in size, of copper colour, is tolerably good looking, has a low and soft manner of speech. There you go. Tolerably good looking. You know what that means. $5,800. They stole gold certificates from a bank. Burglars wanted. Looks like they're advertising. They're actually trying to catch these 3 burglars. The convictions of the thieves who broke into our premises. $1,000. Money to be made. $1,000 offered for the detection of the person who murdered Bridget Landegren. Wanted John Woodward for embezzling $82,000. He'd go somewhere else in America and be very, very well off. Probably have a shave, change his hair. 1,000 reward for General John H. Morgan. Just interesting. And the last one, another runaway from Richards Ferry. 30-year-old, 5'8" to 10 inches. His complexion is dark, though he's not black, and his hair is long. He's very shrewd. No reason to believe he's attempting to get on a free state. I will give the above reward if taken out of Virginia, $50 if taken 20 miles from home, or $20 if taken from the neighborhood. Trying to save his money with a petty cheap reward. That's that. Now, said something the other day. Some of you were irked. Well, not irked. One person who saw the Sunday show was irked. One person. Now, I shall hammer that human being with the hammer of truth. Here it is. Now, Cy from Durham answered the person who criticized me. Got the lickings of a dog. She gave me a personal message that it went on and on and on and on and on about how horrible I am, how evil and wicked, and God's going to punish me. I'm going to be struck down. I'm going to die. I probably will, because we all do. But anyway, and it actually reminded me of a call that I got years ago. My job was to play devil's advocate. So if I got somebody on who was, I suppose, an agnostic, I would question their beliefs and find out why they believe what they do believe, and find out why they don't believe what a lot of people believe, or certainly a lot more then seem to be religious than are now, except in the southern states of the United States. However, I played devil's advocate with this person, and we both ended the call friendly. It wasn't a big deal. However, when I came off air, this is a phone call I received at 2:20 in the morning. And says, oh, there's an oldish lady here wants to have a word with you. And I thought, no big deal. Hello. And this woman was a Catholic and avid Christian, and she gave me an earful. The Lord is this and the Lord is that, and he's going to do that to you. He's going to kill you. You're going to crash your car on the way home. Thanks. Anyway, this was kind of along the same lines anyway. Cy from Durham says, you mentioned different religions all believe that Earth and life on Earth started at different times, which is absolutely true, and you can look all of this up. Any book that was written by any real God or prophet would surely not get that fact wrong, because God would know when he made Earth, if they did. If they didn't know and they did get that wrong, they're obviously not real. But I want to know, what do these actual religions say? In essence, what I think Cy's after is he wants to find out how close to the truth all of these religions get. So I'm going to give you the religions. Check these all online if you wish, because you can. I'm going to give you all the religions and when they believe life on Earth began. Okay. Or how old Earth is, if you prefer. Jewish people believe that the Earth is 5,770 years old, because their prophets, Hebrew prophets, say 5,770 years old. Now, we know that our communities have existed here in Britain for over 400,000 years. So we know that that's massively off. So if we were doing family fortunes, tragically, and again, love to you and respect to you, Jewish folk, but that would have been right. See how the Hindus get on. The Hindus believe it was 1.96 billion years ago. There's quite a gap between those two. The Sikhs believe it was 15 billion years ago. The Anglicans, Church of England, they say 4,004 years ago. Methodists and Protestants and 298 Christian faiths, they believe what the Bible says, and the Bible says that, and they're not even, God doesn't even know when he did it, but he says it's somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. Now, we already know that just here in this part of Britain, it's 400,000 years. So it's massively, it's 390,000 years off at best, right? Buddhists, they believe that life has always existed and that we all float around on the life stream. It's a different thing, but you also can't say they're wrong, which is quite clever. Catholics, they don't agree with the Bible. It's your book. Anyway, but they don't believe in it. They don't agree with it. They used to agree to the Bible until about 90 years ago, because they could then prove that the dates in the Bible were wrong. So the Catholics instantly changed the Bible, changed their Bible. So now they don't have a view when it was. In other words, God and all of the people that know everything about everybody from back then, miraculously, except it was all written 400 years after they're all dead. But anyway, they know everything about it, but God had no idea when he built it. Oh, just having one of them days, can't remember. So now they don't have a view, so they can't be criticized. Scientific fact. Let's chuck science in there for you. Earth has been at a stage where it cooled, where life could be sustained, and that's what all of these are talking about, 4.3 billion years ago. 4.3 billion years ago. So now let me just put the numbers on this. The nearest faith to that is 2 billion years out. That would be the Hindus, the nearest. They're over 2 billion years out. Now, if somebody missed your birthday by 2,000,000,000 years, you'd be a bit peeved, wouldn't you? Really would. So all of these religions, at the minimum, is 2 billion years out. Just hitting you with a fact or two there. You see, when you look, and I know a lot of people don't look at for stuff. I'm fascinated by finding stuff out and learning myself. And I wouldn't have gone into that kind of minutia if somebody hadn't ragged me arse. But anyway, so there's the truth. Joan said, Alan, I used to love listening to you on the radio. You always used to come up with jokes, and you did a thing about 15, 20 years ago where you used to crack northeastern jokes. Could you give us one or two of those jokes? Well, I don't know whether these are those jokes, but I did put a book together called Simply the Best Way, Geordie Jokes and Stories. And I haven't used them for this. I've had a look at some new ones. Paula took an eye test this week, but was it the Geordie eye test, which is Y-I. Also, lad in Ashington at the baths, and a girl starts moving in on him, and he says, are you flirting? She says, no, I've still got one foot on the floor. Okay. Bloke walks into a hairdresser's in Rothbury, where the lad walked along the ragged rocks. Walks into the hairdresser's, and he asks for a perm. And the girl says, I wandered lonely as a cloud. And I know that poor. Geordie crashes into the car of a Cockney. It took the Cockney 6 weeks to work out that Hadaway and Shite wasn't a solicitor. Geordie goes to the doctor. The doctor says, what's wrong? He says, I've got knee problems. And the doctor says, well, bugger off then. Okay. And the last one, I just like this. I'm sorry, but Bruce Lee, the famous Kung Fu Bruce Lee, visited Newcastle, and he was offered a drink. Do you know what he asked for? Water. Anyway, sorry, that's shabby. If you can do better, and please do send them in. We could do with some of that. Let me have a look at see if you've got any commentary so far. Let's go back to the peaceful bit and take the busy bits. Thank you very much for all your stars and smiles and all of that. We are family. I had a strange conversation today talking about Alan and the ghost historian. I know it's AI, but it was curious about the hunts, so I've educated it about us. Jenny says, Alan, was the story of the Titanic staged? I read that it was planned to sink it. No, but there was an awful lot of dodginess involved. The Shafto pub was a really rough house at its peak, says Steve. Yeah, that had me strung up by me. But anyway, The Adventures of Sinclair. Love your show. That's Rob and Lisa. Thanks, you guys. The House of Sinclair. Love that. Steve again. I have a similar story with a lady called Esther from Leam Lane, 30 years and counting. I was kissy pooing at one point, kissy, and I thought she was such a good friend. I didn't, when you don't want to spoil a friendship, and then the friendship kind of goes, and you think I should have spoiled the friendship, But anyway, I think maybe everybody's got one of them. We are family. That was always the awful thing when you fancied a lass and you couldn't get across to chat to her. Yeah, separate one from the herd. It's very hard because you always go out in large groups. Necropink. I don't know why, but there's something creepy about Victorian photography. Yeah, I dig it. Right, let's keep going, see if there's any busy ones. It's disgusting what white men have done and still do. Robbo, legend, thank you. Who the hell does this person think they are to fire nasty stuff at that? Wait, water off a duck's back, man. Religion is one of them things that it's caused death and misery since it was invented. I love it when Christians say God will condemn you to burn in hell for eternity, but God loves you. Yeah, absolutely. Don't Christians believe the Bible to be the word of God? So isn't changing it a blasphemy? They've changed it. They've put a different spin on it every time you reprint it. You don't print the same thing. And there's something like 500 different versions of the Bible where different faiths have said, oh, I don't agree with that. I'll take that out. But I do agree with this. We'll put that in. By the time it's like 2,000-year-old, 1,600-year Chinese whisper. Anyway, that's everything there. Bobby Shafter was entertaining back in the day. Depended which side of the bar seat you were sitting on, I think. As a Catholic, I've never believed the Bible, says Sean. There you go. Believe what you like. If you want to believe all of this, feel free. Just play nice with everybody that doesn't ask for much, instead of killing us, because that tends to have been what else we got. Got a few of that kind of random picks, and then I've got like a little funnies section. So we'll go there first. We've got this, and I don't think, I hope this does me no favors. I am marginally hairier than that. But I understand where it comes from, and that was Adam that did that for me, and did one for Tony, which I think Tony comes out marginally better. I think Media Mastermind, and Adam's put himself in there as well. Wheels of Steel Warrior. Professor X, I think. That's from York. Whip my gate. Brilliant. Love York. This is what would happen if a borrower ever got hold of a bottle of Brune. That was my drink of choice when I was a kid. I came unstuck because of that. That's a group of troops coming back from the war. This is a man with no legs, with little metal pads put on his stumps, having his hair scuffled. Charming. That's respect for somebody who fought in a war. Ice cold gin and tonic machine? I think so. I'm not a drinker. Oh, this is nasty. When the British Army conquered India, there was an awful lot of people who were village elders who rose against Britain. So they listened to what they had to say. They gave them a chance to be heard, and then they tied them to the front of cannons and blew them in half. It's the British way. Shouldn't get in the way of the great British Raj. This is a man eating an entire turkey on a plane when they used to provide meals on when flying in an airplane was only a rich man's thing or a rich woman's thing. This is a man who catches snakes to fillet them and use their skin to make shoes and belts and similar. This is one of the buildings, one of the sites where Jack the Ripper did his thing. Second killing, I believe. Now, how many of you, I did this briefly. I stayed with my auntie, and she had like 3 kids, and you had to, they didn't have room, they only had 2 bedrooms, and we had to all sleep tops and tails, just like that. looks more fun than it really was. This is a man who burnt off his own fingerprints so that he couldn't be caught. He was a gangster. This is a huge Viking rune, and a man seems to be using it to treat his hemorrhoids. Now, my granddad was a coalman on Armstrong Road. He had pigs and carriages. And my dad, as a child, apparently would dress exactly like that. This man is amazing. Now, this man he was known as the Unkillable Man. His name is Sir Adrian Carton de Viet. He was shot in the face twice. Then he was shot in the head. Then he was shot in the stomach twice. Then he was shot in the ankle. Then he was shot in the leg. Then they took off one of his ears, shot in the ear. He was in 2 plane crashes. Then he escaped from a prisoner of war camp and he was shot in the eye. And he ended up surviving the war and was given the Victoria Cross. And he deserved it. Sisu, kind of. So that's De Viet. Phil in Stockton wrote, I was fascinated by your conversation about ghost parasites. So I downloaded that show from Robson's World. It blew my mind. The whole thing is so obvious when you say it out loud. Great job. Thank you, Phil. Belinda from Utah. Utah. Whoa. Oh, hang on a second. Get rid of Carlton. There you go. Belinda from Utah. Robson's World is simply fantastic. I'm on my 19th show now. It takes me a couple of hours every night. Most shows last me 3 days. 2 shows a week just before I go to sleep. Shocked, giggling, or both. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Right. Let's look at a few without just bits and bobs, really. I mean, have I given everything? Yes. I think there's just a little mad section I wanted to share with you. So let's rattle through it. First of all, there is this. Now, the gentleman on the right is the man in charge of Robson's World. That is Neil from Media Arts. And the man next to him is the guy that I used to bring out onto the pitch when I worked at St. James's Park. That is Sir Les Ferdinand. And Neil was working with him this very week. Then we've got one of our specials this week, The Land of the Living Dead, The Murder Machine. Now, how come we haven't heard of The Murder Machine, especially when you realize it led to 3 million deaths? And there's a whole host of amazing stories from The Land of the Living Dead. And then we have this, Alien Planet and the Moon Conspiracy. Now, normally when people, even when I have done shows based around ghosts, we've been all over the world doing shows from the pyramids and from the Vatican and from the Nazca Lines in Peru. We've been all over the planet. And yet, most of the stories that we tell of abductions, of first, second, third, and fourth encounters with aliens, they tend to be from Britain or America. So this show is going around the world to find the most vivid and to share them with you. It's amazing. And we also do a little special because people have asked, have you ever done anything about the moon conspiracy? And I hadn't. So we have. It's all there. And they're out this week, and they're Keith Canny Good as out. Another couple of just randoms here. This is one of the giant turtle skeletons when it seems during dinosaur times, everything was like kind of much bigger. Now we've got terrapins, but back then, different thing altogether. Then that was one of the earliest telephones. You had to stick like a pyramid in your ear. Bizarre. Anyway, let's wrap up, and then I've got some clues for you. There's only 5 or 6 of these. I just thought these were actually really cool. And they're all about wildlife. Now, I know some of you have got amazing critters that come to visit you. If you want to send me any pictures of your critters, being an owl for close to 50 years, I quite like this. It's looking yourself up. And then there's this dodgy landing. Because they always look so graceful in flight, but not necessarily on landing. This one's great. Hey, Dad, the bloke up there says he could knock you out anytime. Go and sort him out. Go and sort him out, Dad. This is just one of those captures you'll probably never get again. It's a bear in the water, and directly behind is some kind of heron, or I think it's a heron. Could be a seagull. Just the two shots coming together. The Beach Boys always used to sing those songs like Surfing USA. There's a penguin that looks like he's doing precisely that. This one, I think he's smelled the breath of the other elephant seal. This is 3 owls. Yeah, one of them, I think, maybe he's had too much to drink. Oops. And then there's this, which I think is just a cool shot, isn't it, of a frog. And the other one, do you remember what Bruce Lee's favorite drink was? Water. Isn't that amazing? Great shot. So that is our show for tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me just quick. Oh, there's only been a few more on the bottom. The Bible is Chinese whispers at best. It's changed more often than I've had hot dinners. There you go. Got knee problems. Margaret thought that was funny. His face is well off. You're quite right. There you go. So anyway, that's the blah. Tomorrow, classic. You will love it. Get the ket tomorrow, 7:30. Now, 2 clues. Died, in other words, is the first clue. Died, in other words. Died, in other words. And the other clue is, and one of these words is no longer politically correct, but I don't give a beggar, right? Because it's something that I have been in my time, and many people are, I still am a bit. Handy if you went to Yale or if you're chubby, okay? Handy if you went to Yale or if you're chubby, okay? Handy if you went to Yale or if you're chubby, and died, in other words. Tomorrow, classic. It's a one that we've kind of done, but not properly. First time. This is going to be great. I have high hopes. And the reason is that the information that I found out was like, that was a lot. So tomorrow night, 7:30, look forward to your company. Thanks for joining me this time of night. I do appreciate it. And I do know that there's temptations to watch 1,000 other things. Until we are together again, from me, Alan Robson, and everybody associated with the Ghost Historian. Good night. God bless you. And I wish you well. Till next time. Farewell. Bye-bye. I'm ending my stream. There you go.